Hello, welcome to the Autism Recovery Summit 2, Hope and Possibilities. I'm your host, Luminara Serdar, and I want to remind you before we introduce our next guest that we have an awesome upgrade package available, which means you get to own all the speaker interviews and then some more little goodies. So go check that out if that's something you're interested in. I'm so happy here to introduce Zen Honeycutt. She's actually one of my faraway mentors, someone I've really admired from afar for a while. And she's the founder and director of Moms Across America, a nonprofit national coalition of unstoppable moms. And the goal of them is to, at a local mom level, to change, to promote a knowledge and shift in things that are affecting our food supply, and sort of local and then a national level to really create change that's needed because it's harming our kids. And I'm sure Zen will get into that. And I want to say one other thing, which I'm really excited about, is that Moms Across America is expanding a little bit to Mothers Across the World with co-creator Vandana Shiva, who's an Indian woman, and she's all about food change, is my understanding. So you can say something about that later if you want. But right now, welcome, Zen.
Thank you, Luminar. It really is a pleasure. And thank you to all your listeners and watchers out there. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so glad to have you. Okay, so some people here will never have heard of what GMO is, and some people will never have heard of what glyphosate is. And those are a couple of things that you advocate around. Actually, let me step back and say, how did you become a food advocate? Because those things are about our food supply. So how did you get into this?
Oh, well, thank you. It's a good question because most people don't start out to want to be a food advocate. Most people just want to, live their lives and love their families and play and have fun and have no interest in being a quote unquote advocate or activist at all. And I was definitely one of those people. I became active in this because my son had a food allergy. And when he was about 5 years old, it was Thanksgiving, and we were sitting at the table with about 18 other cousins having a wonderful time. But all of a sudden, my son looked very sick. And I thought, oh, no, it must just be a stomach flu or something. And I just said to him to go to the back room to lay down in the children's room. And I was hoping it would just go away. Don't we all do that? We just hope it'll go away, right?
Yes.
But pretty soon he cried out, and my husband and I ran to him, and he had puffed up like a raspberry. He had red welts all over his face and his neck and his torso and his whole body. And we soon realized that he had eaten a pecan in the stuffing that one of the guests had brought. And so we had to stick an EpiPen in his leg. We couldn't get it out, and we pulled it out, blood spurt everywhere. I mean, it was just really terrifying. And we thought we were going to lose him in the car. His eyes rolled back in his head as we were going to the emergency room. And all we could do was pray to God that he would not take him. We just had to pray. And thank God we did not lose him that night. But what we learned was we had to avoid nuts, and we sort of learned that food could kill our son. And that was not an easy thing to deal with. And this is something that happens to hundreds of people across the country every year. But I have to admit that that's not exactly what got me started in food advocacy. That got me concerned, but it wasn't until he said about 3 or 4 years later, Mom, I wish all my food allergies could go away. And the voice in my head said, that's never going to happen, right? I was resigned about it. I was doubtful. Nothing was going to change it. But then I realized what I was saying to myself in my head was not empowering. And it was actually seeing my son as small, like as somebody who couldn't do anything about his health, and seeing myself as somebody who was, pretty, just small, I guess, or there was no hope there. So I thought about it, and I thought, what if there was something that we could do about this? And I asked him, Ben, would you be my partner? Like, would you drink green drinks and go to different kinds of doctors? Like, would you do whatever it took if you could eat, say, a slice of pizza at a friend's birthday party, a year from now? Because he had all kinds of allergies. He couldn't do that. It just wasn't a possibility for him. And he's like, yes, I would. And I was like, okay, but we got to put some work into it. Would you be my partner? And he said, yes. That's
empowering.
Yeah. So I got partnership. And from then on, there's a saying that goes that a worried mom does better research than the FBI. I became that mom, and I made a promise to my son. I said, I promise you will get better. And that was very scary to me because I didn't know how. But I knew that if I made a promise to him, I would definitely take different actions than if I didn't make a promise, right? I would be putting myself on the line.
Right.
And I did that. And we had this goal together of, you know, a year from now, he could eat a piece of pizza at a birthday party. Within 4 months, his allergies were dramatically reduced. Almost completely non-existent. And within a year, his allergies went down from a 19 down to a 0.2. So he no longer has life-threatening allergies. It's
wow.
Incredible. Yes. And he is so proud of himself. And if he goes to, you know, McDonald's as a treat for Boy Scouts, he will eat nothing. And he respects his body, and he knows what he needs in order to protect himself. And that gives me the most incredible peace of mind, you know, because my son will make those choices for himself. And
because he knows the consequences.
Yes, he does. And my other sons too, they have gluten or had allergies to gluten, dairy, wheat, peanuts, tree nuts, carrageenan, which is a seaweed food thickener, all kinds of allergies. And my husband and I never had allergies. So, you know, this is not genetic. This is a environmental impact. So from there, I asked myself, how could I raise awareness with as many people as possible about GMOs in the shortest amount of time? And I thought of marching into 4th of July parades, because they're local, they're national, and one parade, 3 people deep for 3 miles, means reaching almost 49,000 people.
Wow.
So we can really make a difference with a lot of people. And we've been doing that. We've had over 450 leaders create over 800 events in just the first 3 years along. We're in our 4th year now. We're going to be having more events. We'll talk about them later, but that's how I got started. I just asked myself, what if I could do something about this?
Wow, that's excellent. So the big question is, what did you do that got rid of his allergies in 4 months, or brought them down to the place where he could eat a piece of pizza in a year?
Okay. Well, first of all, you know, we did go to alternative doctors, because the Western medical doctors just wanted to slap a cream on what was happening. He was having a rash around his face, red, his lips were flaring up, they would flake and peel. And they just wanted to put a cream on it. And frankly, the creams hurt and they were not effective. So we took him to other alternative doctors like Chinese medicine, naturopath, holistic doctors, iridologist, who knew the allergy was a carrageenan allergy. She was the only one who could tell us that. And then we did what she suggested, which was things like green drinks, things like MSM, which can coat the lining of the stomach to help give it time to heal. I did not know about things like Restore or anything like that back then. We could talk more about that later. We also went all organic. At the time, just non-GMO. I didn't really know about glyphosate and everything at that time, but we went non-GMO, and which was mostly organic. You know, we did do a lot of organic, and we also put in sauerkraut and good probiotics to help restore his gut bacteria. And it was amazing. The change was completely amazing. He can actually eat nuts now and have zero reaction.
Wow, that's incredible.
Restored his immune system, you know, essentially, because that's where the gut bacteria is the immune system.
Right.
Not 70% of the immune system. So
let's break it down a little bit because let's break that down a little bit. And there might be some parents listening who don't know what a GMO is. Can you tell us what that is?
Yeah. And and then I do want to touch on my son with autism symptoms too. I'm sure we'll get to that. But because at first, all I really knew about was the GMO component. And GMO means genetically modified organism. And there are many different kinds, but the one we're most focused on are the ones in food. And what that means is they take the genetic material from one species and they inject it into a completely unrelated species. This does not happen in nature. The pro-GMO people will tell you that it's it's like a hybrid. It's been happening for thousands of years. Well, if it was happening for thousands of years, then Monsanto wouldn't have to patent it. It wouldn't happen to happen in a lab, right? And they wouldn't be charging 375% more in technology fees for these seeds, right? It happens in a lab. And so some GMOs are BT, which is Bacteroceregenesis. That's a type of toxin that's found in the carcass of a dead grain caterpillar. Really not appealing. Now, they do use this in organic crops, but it's not genetically engineered to constantly reproduce more toxins, okay? It's used, it dries up, it dissipates, it's not harmful when it's used in organic crops. But in GMO crops, they engineer it to become a toxic factory. So when that toxin is in the cell of every plant of, say, corn, and it's gone there via a bacteria or a virus, like it basically infects every cell of the plant, that toxin reproduces more and more reproduces more and more toxins. So when a bug eats it, it explodes the stomach of a bug. It basically puts holes in the bug's stomach, and then the toxins go into its bloodstream and it dies. So that's our food now. That's a 20%, about 20% of GMOs are this Bt toxin, corn or soy or whichever. And the other type of GMO is called HT. It's herbicide tolerant. And that means that you can spray the weeds around it and that crop will live. So they're spraying poison on our food and our food doesn't die. The problem is it absorbs the toxin. They don't wash off. When I learned that, I was very mad. They don't wash off. They go into the cells of the plant. And
so the pesticides and herbicides that are sprayed on there, on this, resistant crop, it gets really inside. And so this poison is inside the cells and then we eat it.
Yeah, especially glyphosate-based herbicides, which we'll talk more about. So and they don't wash off, they don't peel off, they get into the food. And then, and the problem is the residues are very high. The EPA allows, for instance, glyphosate-based herbicides, the most widely used herbicide in the world. That's 80% of GMO crops, 80%, huge amount. There's over 750 glyphosate-based herbicides. They allow glyphosate residues on 158 crops, food and feed crops, anywhere from 0.2 parts per million of glyphosate up to 400 parts per million of glyphosate. And to put that in context, it only takes 0.1 parts per billion to destroy your gut bacteria, which is
our own gut bacteria in our bodies.
Yes, it was proven, in chickens, gut bacteria. But, because there's no human studies on this, obviously, right?
Right. So it gets in the feed that we feed to, let's say, cattle and chickens and pigs or whatever. So it's in there and it gets in their cells. And you say the research shows that it destroys their guts.
Yes, it destroys our gut bacteria. Yes, it goes after the shikimate pathway and actually kills the beneficial gut bacteria and allows for the proliferation of pathogenic gut bacteria. And the bad gut bacteria is what can spark autism symptoms and many other types of autoimmune diseases. So there's Bt, which is where the toxin's built in. There's HT, which is the herbicide tolerant. And what I'm calling is DT, which is desired trait GMOs. And those are CRISPR, RNA. Those are for like greener lettuce or redder tomato. And they don't involve pesticides at all. But the problem with these is that they have a recipe, like say you have a cookie recipe, plain sugar cookies, and you want to put in chocolate chips into it. They have to put the chocolate chip in information into the recipe, so to speak, with promoters that will wake up the genes so that they can read the chocolate chip part, right? So for like greener lettuce, well, they got to read that. So they have promoters that wake genes up, or they have silencers which shut off the function. Like for instance, the browning apple, the non-browning apple, the Arctic apple, it doesn't brown. So they shut off a mechanism. Now, my concern as a mother is what genes rare disease genes could they be waking up? Or what functions of my children, what bodily functions or cell or gene expressions could they be shutting down? We would never know. Let
me just see if I'm getting it and maybe do a summary for parents, is that in some of these foods, like the non-browning apple or the greener lettuce, the gene is different that can turn on or turn off other genes. So in the actual, let's take the apple. So in the apple, it might be making other funky, weird stuff happen within the apple. And then when our children eat that apple, it might be making weird, funky stuff happen in the body. Is that what you're saying?
It could. And we don't know because there's been no human testing done on this. And there's been very little animal testing done on it. And for most of them, there's no, long-term animal studies done on it. And there'd be no way to prove it, right? If your children's cell functions suddenly stop, let's just say, I have no idea, but let's just say, for instance, they stop producing calcium or, serotonin melting, you know what I mean? Like different functions of the body. You would have no way to connect that back to a GMO or a potato. Right. You would have no way to prove that the children's, their functioning would just stop doing that, or, it would wake up a rare disease. In fact, the reason why I got concerned about this is a friend brought her child to a geneticist And he said, because she was going to be doing some dental work. And sometimes when the child goes under anesthesia, if you have certain types of genetics, it can spark autism. So she found out that he has certain types of genes in his body, rare disease genes. And the geneticist said, aren't you concerned? And she said, well, not really, because we all have rare disease genes, right, in our bodies all the time, don't we? And he said, yes, but I am seeing an incredible rise of rare diseases in children. It's almost as if something is waking these genes up.
Oh, wow.
That's exactly what he said. And I thought, wait a second, I just talked to these scientists that said there's promoters that wake up genes, in the body. What if they're waking up rare disease genes? How would we know that? And their response was, we would have no way of knowing.
Right. I mean, it would
that could be happening.
It would be challenging to even create a study or a test that would test that, because it seems so multifactorial, and yeah, it's hard to control for the factors.
And the body's holistic. You really can't change one thing and expect the rest of the body just to keep working. It all works together. So, that. And it's very concerning. These genetically modified organisms that are foreign proteins that our bodies are likely to resist. When you resist, your body creates inflammation. All kinds of diseases can come from inflammation. Then you've got the pesticide and the toxin factor thrown in that. And these toxins have been shown to cause neurotoxicity, to be carcinogenic, to cause changes in the testes and the ovaries, to actually cause liver disease, to, all endocrine disruption as well. So that means they could halt or harm the development of a fetus. And we have a huge problem with infertility in the United States right now. There's just so many problems that are coming, I believe, directly from the food supply and these GMO chemical farming practices.
And when you say this, this set of symptoms that you just mentioned, you're seeing that from glyphosate or from more chemicals than just glyphosate?
More chemicals than just from glyphosate, but there are studies. All of those things I just mentioned can come directly just from glyphosate. We have studies just to prove those on glyphosate-based herbicides. I want to say it's all of the chemicals in the product. Glyphosate-based herbicides, yes.
Okay. Yeah, and we have Stephanie Seneff on the summit, so if anyone wants really to get into the sciencey stuff of the glyphosate and what it does in the body and how it disrupts, she's a great one to watch.
Yes.
So the big question that everyone is probably asking is like, well, why are we doing this to ourselves?
Yes, that is a good question, but it's very easily explained, actually. The chemical companies used to make chemicals for war, right? They sprayed them in Vietnam and in World War II and everywhere. After the wars, they no longer had a market for their chemicals. So they convinced farmers to declare war on bugs and weeds. And they told the farmers it would be cheaper and easier. And the farmers believed that, and it was for a couple of years. It would kill off the weeds, and it would help them to produce higher yields, because they could manage bigger crops. When you have bigger crops, you have higher yields, right?
Yeah.
And when there's less weeds, the plants can create more. So for a couple of years, it did work, but then they noticed a couple of things. One, first of all, spraying the weeds meant drift and meant the crops would die, right? So the crops, this is before GMOs, when they were just using the chemicals. So then they had to genetically engineer the crops so that they would resist the chemicals. So GMOs were created to help the chemical companies sell more chemicals. They were not created to feed the world. That was a marketing tactic that they came up with, and it is really ridiculous, because most of the world doesn't want GMOs. They send them to Haiti and they burn them, So that's how it happened. It was a marketing tactic that they sold to farmers to grow more food. And and God bless farmers. They want to grow more food. They want to feed us. Their hearts are in the right place. They just got sold a bad bill of health, literally.
Right. So you mentioned that your son has autism or had symptoms of autism. Can you say how this ties into that?
Yeah, absolutely. So after about a year of eating GMO free, and my first eldest son getting better, my second son started to show some very erratic symptoms, hitting and screaming. And he was 8 years old, and he was throwing tantrums like a 2-year-old. His teacher called me and said something is going on with him, and his grades have dropped. He's like just putting his head down in class. he used to be a straight 8 student, and he would turn in his test, and he would do one problem and then just turn in, write -9 at the top, out of 10 of them, and just turn it in. He didn't care. All of a sudden,
Oh, wow.
he had no interest in interacting and doing well in school, and he would try to hit us, actually, and he had all kinds of digestive issues. So I said to my husband, this is not a phase. I'm taking him to the doctor. And the doctor that I took him to happened to be an autism doctor, which had a spaced out vaccine schedule. And which was, back then I was still vaccinating. I'm not anymore, but he hadn't had a vaccine in about 5 years, just FYI at this point. So I took him to him, and he said, I'm going to test him for fungus in his urine. And I said, why fungus? And he said, because sometimes pathogenic gut bacteria can lead to, and fungus can lead to, inflammation in the brain. And I was like, wow, I just learned that's what glyphosate does. And we had a very extensive discussion, and I told him about how the pathogenic gut bacteria has on the outer walls something called lipopolysaccharides. And those lipopolysaccharides, their job is to signal the vagus nerve in the gut to go up to the brain and tell the microglia cells to go on attack, bad guy, attack, right? And so
inflammation.
Yes, that's the communication, go on attack. And so when they go on attack, they create glutamate, which is an excitotoxin. And that excitotoxin can excite the neurons and fatigue them, and they can die. And that's just one way. The other way is glyphosate can prevent the calcium from leaving the brain cells. And so then the brain cell neuron can die. So there's lots of different ways, but that's how the gut bacteria is involved. And we tested him for glyphosate at the same time of going to this doctor. And we got the test results back around the same time. The test results from the doctor said he had high fungus, C. diff, Clostridia difficile, which is, very difficult. C. diff, Clostridia difficile. He had 19 different food intolerances. He had leaky gut. He had holes in his small intestine. After a year of eating GMO-free, I was furious. And he said, the thing is, this is happening to most American children. My doctor was this smart.
Wow.
Most American children now have leaky gut. Your kids are just lucky to have a mom who knows about this enough to test them for it. And I said, well, why is this happening? He said, it's the toxins in the food supply and in the environment. And I knew, but, I wanted to really know if he knew why. And then at around the same time, we had initiated glyphosate testing for the first time in America, citizen funding glyphosate testing for tap water, urine, and breast milk. And my son was the first one that we got tested, sent off his results, his test around that same time, came back with 8 times higher the amount of glyphosate than was found anywhere in Europe when they did testing a couple of years before.
Wow. And that was in his urine or blood?
In his urine. Roundup was in his urine at 8.7 parts per billion. And it was also in our tap water at 0.085 parts per billion. Now, 0.1 parts per billion can destroy gut bacteria, right? So it is very close to that amount, which can destroy gut bacteria. And I did the math and figured out that my son would have had to have drunk 9 swimming pools worth of water that day in order to have that much appear in his urine, if all of it came out, which it doesn't. 30% of glyphosate will stay in the bone marrow, right? And in the body and in the organs and the tissues.
Wow.
Right? So that was just what came out. So I knew it wasn't the water. It had to have also been the food. And I realized that this son, my middle son, was eating wheat. The other 2 were gluten intolerant, and they were not eating wheat. And we know now that wheat is sprayed with glyphosate as a drying agent in many areas, especially the wetter regions in the north, in Canada and northern United States. So this was very concerning. So he took wheat out of his diet. And within 6 weeks, we retested him. We also put in good gut bacteria and some other things. But within 6 weeks, we retested him. Glyphosate levels were no longer detectable, and his autism symptoms were gone. And have never.
Wow. So all that behavior stuff, all that, turning in his test unfinished and lack of motivation and whatever, gone.
Everything went away and has never come back. It's been over 3.5 years. He's a straight A student. And it's not because he's, Aspergery or anything like that. He's just able to focus, and do the work. He's helpful and happy and
Wow.
and I'm really, really glad, because I know that autism, therapies and special foods and all that can cost a family anywhere from $60,000 to $100,000 a year. you know.
Yes, absolutely. And
So we're saving
you
a lot of
imagine.
money by buying organic, in my opinion. And sauerkraut, which is one of the things we did. We put sauerkraut in. We did have to treat the fungus, by the way, with a $650 a month compound medication, which I'm not happy we did, but we did it, and it was very expensive. But we're saving, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars by eating organic and not having to treat autism symptoms or buy expensive medications.
That's an excellent point, because a lot of people will say, well, I can't afford, to pay for the organic food, but you see it come out the other end.
We can afford not to buy organic.
Exactly.
This is how I see it. The cost to our health and to our community is far greater than the cost of paying a little bit more money for organic food.
Right. And so you mentioned that the glyphosate was sprayed on wheat. Can you just say that a little bit more? Because were you eating organic wheat at that time or not? I mean, just say a little bit about that for people who are eating conventional wheat products.
Sure. So with him, we didn't have wheat in the house because I was gluten-free and my other two sons were gluten-free. So it was just easier to have gluten-free bread. And we would go out to restaurants or to his Nana's house or whichever, and we would let him eat wheat. And conventional wheat, non-organic wheat, not all wheat, but non-organic wheat, and not in all areas, just in the wetter areas, it's a common practice to spray glyphosate-based herbicides, Roundup and other herbicides, on the crop before harvesting. So it uniformly dries out the entire crop, and they don't have to wait days. They can just, dry it out all at once. This is also done on sugar. We cut sugar out of his diet too, by the way, during the holidays. That was very challenging, but we did it. And I'm very proud of him for doing it. Not eating candy during Christmas or Thanksgiving was amazing. So they spray glyphosate-based herbicides on crops such as wheat, sugar, soy, corn, peas, legumes, garbanzo beans, white beans, black beans, and tea, a lot of different crops that need barley, hops. So it's in beer. That's why it was found in beer.
I didn't realize it was sprayed so widespread. I heard about the wheat being sprayed, but now you're saying that it's really kind of across the board sprayed on a ton of different crops.
Yes, and it's also sprayed on the soil before crops are planted. That's why you'll find levels of glyphosate in berries and potatoes and sweet potatoes. It's not sprayed directly on the crop. It's sprayed on the soil to clear the soil of weeds before they plant. So it can uptake, and it also uptakes into grapes. And there was a supporter that sent us 12 tests of California wine, and it was found unfortunately in wine, including organic, but the organic was 28 times lower. So it's definitely lower, and that's due to contamination. They're definitely not using Roundup in organic crops.
Right, it blows over from the next field.
It blows. It comes down in the rain, unfortunately. It's another thing we have to think about. These chemicals that are used don't just affect that farm. The chemicals dissipate in the air, and the particles go up into the air, moisture collects around it, and then you have Roundup rain. Falls down in states away, or dicamba rain, right? So that's what's happening. Thousands of miles away, a crop can be impacted by chemical rains, and it's been scientifically, they've found rain.
So what someone's doing in the Midwest might affect the West Coast or the Pacific Northwest or Europe, or who knows.
Yes.
And then I would want to add too that, if you're spraying glyphosate and then the rain comes down, where does that water go and where does that glyphosate go?
Absolutely. 90% of the runoff of chemicals in the water come from urban use of Roundup. They spray it on our streets, our sidewalks, our playgrounds, our parks, our community areas. It is very popular. In fact, I looked up in Orange County where I live, there were 65,000 pounds of glyphosate alone that was used in 1 year in our county, over 265,000 pounds of different herbicides and pesticides. We're just inundated with chemicals. And in California, we're lucky because in California, we have a Department of Pesticide Regulation. In many states, this does not exist. They don't have departments that regulate pesticide use. So the states, the farmers and the city workers don't have to report it. But in
so your 65,000 pounds in Orange County is regulated. Like that's a
It's
low amount.
recorded. Yeah, it's record. I shouldn't say
Okay.
regular, but yeah, it's recorded, and it should
Okay.
be being regulated. Yes, the Department of the Commissioner of Agriculture is supposed to regulate it, but I haven't seen much happening. For instance, we reported that they have trucks. You've all probably seen these trucks that spray Roundup along the sidewalks to get rid of the weeds. Well, that's actually illegal. The EPA acknowledges the label as law, and the label on glyphosate-based herbicides says keep people and pets away until dry. Are they doing that? No, they're just spraying, and then 2 minutes later, a person and their kid and their pet can
They're
walk.
not even telling people what they're doing.
They walk right into that spray,
Right.
and they have there's all kinds of videos out there of that happening in Hawaii, all across the United States and New Zealand. You can see it whenever there's a 4-foot swath of brown grass by the roadside. That's what they've done, right?
Like highways and freeways, that happens commonly.
Highways, freeways, sidewalks. They want to get the weeds out of the asphalt because they say that's an asset, right? That the weeds will destroy, and so they have to protect their asset, and they have to spray for weeds. Now the good news is you can get this stopped. If you go to our website, momsacrossamerica.org, we have a page called Action, and on there is National Toxin Free Towns. And there's all kinds of steps you can do, going to your city council, going to your Parks and Rec, we went to Orange County Public Works, and they're going to be doing a pilot program where they're going to be using steam instead of chemicals. So it's
steam, like just hot water?
Steam, hot water, totally non-toxic hot water, and it's from a company called Weed Technics from Australia that's developing a facility out here in California, and we're very excited about that. Completely non-toxic steam can kill off weeds and help maintain landscaping and sidewalks and streets, very easily. So there's definitely, when we got that to happen in our Orange County Public Works, and other towns have gotten that done. Kathleen Halal and her group at Non-Toxic Irvine got Irvine to stop spraying Roundup. And there's several cities across the nation that have gotten them to stop spraying Roundup. And what you want to do, just one tip before we move on to something else, is you want to go to your city council, your board of ed, or your school and say, could you please discontinue the use of Roundup and use organic alternatives instead, or mulch, or community service projects. Don't say ban, because they will get all worked up about that. A ban just sounds very extreme. And also in some cities, you can't do that because the chemical manufacturers have pressured the Department of Agriculture to say you cannot ban a chemical in your local community. You can't do that. It has to be the state. The state has to say whether or not that chemical is banned or not.
Okay. Yeah, I think some of the GMO stuff that came out around election time too, to vote for whether or not people wanted GMO labeling. Also, I think there was some things about, should that be at a state level, a county level, a city level, a federal level. So yeah, these are things to watch out for. And do you have that kind of information on that website, on your website, where it kind of has action steps people can, like, step by step that they can do?
Absolutely. We have short videos. We have lots of tips. We have flyers. Here's one of our flyers. It's a community flyer. It has all of the information that you need. This is like for homeowners associations and school boards and city councils, large groups of people that want something or your representative, something with pretty pictures and solutions. So we offer these on our website that you can order. And if you create an event, you can actually get a box of these, which includes those flyers for free if you pay for shipping. We just don't want to send them out unless we know for sure you're going to use them.
Right. So you provide materials for people who want to host a local event. You want to say something about that?
Yes, sure. I would love to. So it all started when we decided to join into 4th of July parades. Back then, we didn't have the funds to have everything free, but we have enough sponsorship now to give out free flyers, which include GMO information flyers, community flyers about glyphosate, Roundup alternatives, and for Earth Day, we're going to have Why Eat Organic flyers. And the Why Eat Organic flyers will have information about health, farming and economy, and climate change. And if you didn't know this yet, that organic farming can actually reduce climate change because it increases the soil, it increases the absorption of carbon. It increases the nutrient dense quality of the soil, and it can absorb more water, and it can also sequester more carbon. Like, there's all kinds of fabulous things about organic farming, right? So we have those flyers and then some great bumper stickers to ban glyphosate and all kinds of things. So if you go on our website and click on events, and then you scroll down, you click on host your own, and you fill in an event that's happening or that you want to create near you, a couple weeks or a couple months down the road. And when you create that event, we know you're committed to passing out those flyers. So you'll get an email with a free code that you can use to purchase a huge box of materials, about $200 worth of materials. And you just use that code to get the free box. You do have to pay for shipping, but we have a promotion that'll be going on very soon where sometimes we get sponsors to help pay for shipping, but in general, usually you'd have to pay for shipping. It's $20 though. It's really, it's not much. It's around $20. So
yeah. And I just want to clarify, this is for people in the US or Canada, or do you do international?
Yeah, I think we've only done the US, and it really kind of makes sense in the US because it says Moms Across America, our flyers. We don't have flyers like this right now for mothers across the world. We would have to have translation and all kinds of stuff. Someday when we have staff, we can do that. But right now we're working on a shoestring budget. But I do want to say one other thing about the flyers. If you pass out the flyers in these boxes, it's about 1,000 flyers. We did the math and we figured, let's just say that everybody got the flyer, everybody reads it. We know that's not going to happen, right? So we need more than one person doing this in each town. But if one person passed out 1,000 flyers and those 1,000 families switched over to organic food and bought $200 a week of organic food, if those 1,000 families did that, that would be a $10 million shift to organic food from one person passing out 1,000 flyers. So if we can do 100 people across the country, which is very modest considering the number of supporters that we have and many other groups have, that would be a $1.4 billion shift to organic.
That would be $1.4 billion that's taken away from the big food companies that use all the pesticides and GMOs and stuff.
And we can do, that's just 100 people. If a couple thousand people did that, no problem, right? And we know this is happening already. We've been causing this by marching into 4th of July parades and reaching thousands of people locally and millions nationally, and many other groups are doing this great work because I believe it was last year, there was a 30% increase of organic purchases. And there was a $4 billion drop of junk food, of conventional purchases.
Wow, that's amazing.
It is happening. The numbers don't lie. I mean, it's very easy to spend $200 a week on organic food. Now, right. I know that low-income people, cannot do all organic. But we suggest that you start with rice and beans, the staple things that give you a lot of protein that need to be organic. And because they can be sprayed with glyphosate, and as much as you can of your milk products and your egg products, your rice and beans, and highly sprayed, other things like the garbanzo beans and the wheat and lentils and all those that are sprayed with glyphosate. If you want to see the levels of glyphosate, which are the highest, you can see them on our website under data. There's a list that says EPA, allowable residues of glyphosate. And also this website from Tony Mitra from Canada. He got back 7,000 food samples of glyphosate testing in Canada from all around the world, and he's transcribing that. And by the time this is aired, he might have the full report of his data out. Right now he has about 3,000 of them transcribed. And he shows on there that garbanzo beans, white beans, black beans, and even gluten-free foods are high in glyphosate, unfortunately.
Wow, that's good to know, because we have people avoiding gluten and thinking it's healthy and doing the gluten-free, and it's not necessarily.
And organic. It has to be vegan and vegetarian and organic. It has to be organic.
Yes.
It's not healthy if you're eating vegan and vegetarian and gluten-free and it's not organic. I'm sorry, it's just not.
Yeah. Well, gosh, Zen, I think it's so amazing how you have these statistics at your fingertips, and how you even get these statistics about people, spending their money and how much, mainstream food loses because of that. That's wonderful. Mm-hmm. And you did mention that you have Moms Across America is branching out to be international. Will you just say something about that?
Oh, well, it's been so exciting. I never expected this, I really...
We never do.
I had a natural wellness company before this. I had a lavender product line. Before that, I was a fashion designer. I had no interest in, being an international speaker and traveling around the world. But I've been to China, Australia, New Zealand, Maui, Switzerland, just all these different places. I'm going to Japan. Well, we'll have been back from Japan by the time this is aired. And I've seen around the world the changes that are happening in people. And we've been connecting with people from other countries as well, Ireland, Jamaica, Africa. And the moms are seeing changes in their children's health. They do not like it. There's higher rates of infertility and sterility. There's higher rates of cancer. There's pockets of cancer towns that we went to in New Zealand where they do spray Roundup alongside the roads. They don't allow GMOs, but they spray a lot of Roundup. And it's happening around the world. Our children are being impacted. In the United States, it's 1 out of 2 children have a chronic illness today. That sounds unbelievable, but if you include diabetes,
Yes.
the autism, allergies, autoimmune issues, asthma, it's 1 out of 2 of our kids have something going on like that. And it's happening around the world, not to that extent, but it's close in some places like Australia and New Zealand. So it's really great to connect with other moms around the world and get their stories. If you go to our website and you click on, I believe it's resources, there's some videos there from Taiwan, from Africa, from the UK, of moms that are dealing with these types of issues. And I urge everybody to watch Alice from Uganda. She was in Australia, but her family is in Uganda, and she was from Uganda. And she blows every argument that Monsanto has about GMOs out of the water without even trying. It decreased crop yield. It increased the toxicities. The people got diabetes. They couldn't grow as much food anymore because the crop wasn't as fertile after a few years. So essentially her African village is starving and people are dying from GMOs.
Because they introduced GMOs.
Yes, and infertility, she lost 9 babies before she switched over to eating organic. 9 babies. And now she has 3 healthy kids when she stopped eating GMOs and eating toxic chemicals. Really, really fascinating stories that we're hearing from around the world, and we're very excited to be connecting with moms from around the world and partnering, mothers around the world, and partnering with mothers, because we're a very powerful force, and we will not stop. I always say we will not give up, because the love for our children will never end.
That is an amazing, inspirational story and a great reason to keep going. And it's really so grassroots, and the moms really have a lot of power. If you think, I can't do anything, I'm just a mom, not true. Look at what Zen's accomplished and what's being accomplished all over the world. So this is the time to step up and make your dollars matter, really, right? What you spend in the grocery store or the farmer's market.
We make 90% of the household purchases, we women. We control the economy. The chemical companies do not control the economy. We do. We are the ones who make those purchases. So all we need to do is to educate each other, right? And our city council people, our church groups, the food directors at our schools. All we need to do is to connect with them, share this information with them, support them in switching over. I asked my preschool, what's your budget? They told it was $600 a month or something for food and snacks for the preschool. And I beat it by $123 with organic and non-GMO snacks. I just figured it out,
Wow.
And that's
Is that on your website anywhere?
Yes, it's on our website under About and GMO info. There's a lot of resources on our website. We've got videos, we've got scientific studies. And I really want to thank all the moms out there that have given us testimonials about their children getting better when they get off GMOs and eat organic. It's so inspiring. And I definitely could not be doing this alone. You talk about my accomplishment. This is an accomplishment of thousands of women across the country and around the world. And if we keep supporting each other and sharing our stories and making better purchases, eating or buying organic and sustainable practices, then we can transform the food supply, the health of our nations, and the future of our world. Because when our children have the capacity to function and to produce and to be responsible and to give back and contribute, who knows what they will contribute to society. Look at Google, created by 2 guys, right? If their potential had been impacted in any way, if their intelligence or their ability to communicate or anything had been impacted, they would not have produced that. They would not have created that. So we really do need to protect our children. They are the future.
They certainly are.
Don't protect them, we have no future.
That's true. That's true. And I love how in the beginning you said you partnered with your son. Like he agreed and went into that partnership, and your kids are going to be that next generation, thank goodness, of men who are going to carry this forth. And so I guess that's a piece too. Like if we get our kids involved and why we're doing this and what this is about, then they can carry that forward to the next generation.
Yes, absolutely. And I want to say a little bit about that because people will say it's not easy to get your kids on board, right? I totally get that. If you got a 2-year-old, you're going to be working on this for a little bit. But once your kids are a little bit older, can understand, there was a 4-step process for that. The first one is to acknowledge that enough is enough, right? Like my son said, I really wish my allergies could go away, right? And he was ready to do something about that. He acknowledged that. And you can point this out to kids too. Like, did you notice that you didn't feel well after you ate that? And it might take a few times, right? So you and they need to get to a point where you're done with this. This is not working. I remember saying in my head, I don't care if we have to eat birdseed. We're going to get better, And so then the next thing to ask is, what could happen if you do get better, right? He could eat pizza at a birthday party, which he doesn't want to do anymore, but he could, and what would you feel like and how much happier would you be? And then the third thing is to sorry, I just lost my train of thought. The third thing is to, it's not to promise. Sorry, you're going to have to edit this out. 1 second. Let me get my thoughts here.
Sure.
So it was to acknowledge enough is enough. Ask what if. 1 second.
The partnership.
Oh yes, sorry, partnership. Okay.
Okay, dude, start like as if you're just picking up.
Okay. And the third thing is to create partnership. Now, this could be with your child. It could be with other organizations, right? If you're trying to get Roundup out of your town or out of your school or whichever, create partnership with other people and have accountability. It's really important to have a buddy with this. Like have another woman that you can go to the park with and that the snacks you're going to bring are all organic, right? And you can have partnership. And with your child, ask for that partnership. Will you do this with me? And then the fourth thing is promise. Make a promise. Promise your child that they will get better, or promise your cohorts around, we will get Roundup out of the school. I promise. And that's scary to do, but you will take actions you normally wouldn't have taken because you promised, you put your word and yourself on the line. And that's a big deal. A lot of people avoid that. And the other thing that makes it successful is if you have a date. So that's why partially Moms Across America took off, because we had a date, 4th of July, and my promise was 100 people would join into 4th of July parades. We had 179. It was just awesome. And people will be motivated because of your commitment. If you're wishy-washy, people won't be motivated. They won't want to join in. So make a promise.
Right. Well, those are excellent steps. Thank you so much. Is there any, I just wanted to say we have the Moms Across America website link down below the interview. So all those resources that Zen spoke of, you could just click the link and then go browse around there. And is there anything else, last word you want to leave our listeners with today?
Well, I'd just like to say, please, for anybody who's finding out about this the first time and is mad, I totally get it. I am mad. So many of us are mad at our government, our food manufacturers. And I'd ask you to not get caught up in being angry, because it's not good for your health. And it's not productive, and you deserve, better than that. So look for the inspiration, look for the other people that you can partner with to do something about this. Forgive yourself. I fed my child GMOs for 9 years. I had no idea. I could feel very guilty about that, but there was no reason for me to know. So forgive yourself. Don't be angry, let it go. And just look at doing one thing a day. Just one thing, and then feel really good about that, and share with other people what you've done, and have a goal, and just feel good that you're taking steps to improve your child's health and the health of your community, because it's not enough for my children to eat organic, because their future spouses are out there somewhere, right? Your children's future spouses are out there somewhere. So this is a community issue. And be glad that every time you do something, it's not just for your family, it's for the entire community. And
public health issue.
Yes, it's a community health issue. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. There was a thought I had that I wanted to add. I love your inspiration. You're inspiring to me, and hopefully to the moms out there. They're going to go click on your website and get the kits and start in their local community. If or check, maybe someone's already doing something and you can join in and you'd have already support that's going.
Yep.
I want to thank you so much, Zen, for sharing your wisdom, your statistics, your years of anguish. And the climbing out of that, and and your real stories, and I especially would love for people to go to the website and look at those videos of the women that you say all around the world go GMO free and organic, and what they see as the changes. And thank you so much for bringing inspiration to so many, and thanks for being on our summit.
Thank you so much. And just one more time, it's momsacrossamerica.org and Moms Across the World. Even though it's called Mothers Across the World, the website is momsacrosstheworld.org as well.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you, everybody.